You've probably walked past a fruit tree at a nursery, looked at the price tag, looked at your backyard, and just kept walking. Either the space isn't there or the cost to set one up properly just doesn't make sense. But here's what most people never get told: some of the most productive fruit trees in the world do not need a backyard. They don't even need the ground. All they need is a pot, the right soil, and about 2 feet of space on your patio, balcony, or doorstep. And by the end of this video, you'll know exactly which 13 fruit trees those are, which ones grow the fastest, and which one surprised even experienced gardeners with how much fruit it drops in a single season, so make sure you stick around for that one. Welcome back to Evergreen Gardens. If you're new here, this is the place where we make gardening work for real people with real budgets and real space limitations. No fluff, no expensive setups, just practical tips that actually get results. So whether you've been here from the start or you're joining us for the very first time, genuinely glad you're here. Before we get into it, if you find this useful, I promise you will go ahead and hit that subscribe button and tap the bell so you don't miss what's coming next on this channel. It costs nothing and it genuinely helps us keep putting out content like this. Alright, let's get into it. Number 1, Dwarf Lemon Tree. This is probably the most popular container fruit tree in the world, and honestly the reputation is well deserved. A dwarf lemon tree sits comfortably in a medium to large pot, handles both indoor and outdoor conditions with ease, and can produce fruit almost year-round depending on your climate and how well you care for it. The variety most people gravitate toward is the Meyer lemon. What makes it special is that it's actually a natural cross between a lemon and a mandarin orange, which means the fruit comes out slightly sweeter than your standard supermarket lemon with a thinner skin and a more complex flavor. It starts producing fruit relatively quickly compared to other citrus trees, and it responds very well to being moved indoors during colder months. All it needs is a bright sunny spot, a south-facing windowsill, a warm patio corner, or a balcony that gets good sun for most of the day. Start it in a well-draining potting mix, water consistently without letting it sit in soggy soil, and this tree will reward you for years. Number 2, Dwarf Lime Tree. Right next to the lemon on the citrus family tree is the lime, and the Bierce lime, also known as the Persian lime, is the variety you want if you're growing in containers. It's seedless, consistently productive, and it doesn't grow wild and unmanageable the way standard lime trees planted in the ground tend to do. What makes this particular variety stand out for container growers is that it is almost always in some stage of either flowering or fruiting. That means you are rarely sitting around waiting a long time between harvests. The fragrance alone when this tree flowers is worth every bit of pot space it takes up. If you enjoy cooking, baking, making drinks, or just want something fresh at arm's reach, a lime tree on your patio is one of the most practical decisions you can make as a home gardener. Number 3, Fig Tree. This one surprises people every time. Fig trees deserve far more attention in container gardening. What many people don't realize is that figs actually prefer slightly crowded roots. In a container, that root restriction encourages the tree to focus on fruit production, often leading to earlier harvests. A brown turkey or petite nègre fig grown in a large pot can begin producing fruit within the first or second year. Unlike many fruit trees, figs don't need a second tree for pollination, just one tree in one pot can produce plenty of fruit. They're also easy to manage in colder climates. When winter comes, move the dormant tree into a garage, shed, or basement until spring. Low maintenance, productive, and perfect for small spaces. Number 4, Dwarf Apple Tree. Yes, apple trees can absolutely grow in containers and produce real fruit, and no, you do not need a massive orchard to make it happen. The key phrase here is dwarf rootstock. When you purchase a dwarf apple tree from a nursery, it has been grafted onto a rootstock that naturally limits how large the tree will grow. Varieties like Fuji, Gala, and Honeycrisp all come in dwarf versions, and they adapt very well to large containers with the right care. One important thing to note with apple trees is that most standard varieties require a second apple tree nearby in order to cross-pollinate and produce fruit. So if you decide to go this route, plan for 2 pots and 2 trees. They do not have to be the same variety, they just need to be blooming around the same time. The good news is that many garden centers now stock self-fertile apple varieties, which removes that requirement completely and lets you get away with a single tree. Give it a large pot, full sun, and consistent feeding through the growing season, and you will have apples coming off that tree that taste nothing like what you find in a supermarket. Number 5, Dwarf Peach Tree. Peaches in a pot sounds like something straight out of a high-end garden magazine, but it is actually one of the most practical and accessible choices on this entire list. Dwarf peach varieties like Bonanza and Patio Peach were specifically bred and developed for container growing, meaning they were designed from the start to thrive in exactly the kind of setup we're talking about today. They stay compact, they bloom with beautiful pink flowers in spring that make your outdoor space look amazing, and they go on to produce full-size juicy fruit that tastes every bit as good as anything you'd pick from a large tree. One thing that makes peaches particularly great for containers is the mobility. Peach trees require a certain number of cold hours during winter. This is called the chill hour requirement in order to bloom and fruit properly the following season. When your tree is in a pot, you have direct control over where it sits throughout different seasons, which gives you a level of management that ground growers simply do not have. Number 6, Kumquat Tree. Kumquats are criminally underrated, and I will stand by that statement. These small citrus fruits are unique because you eat the entire thing, skin and all, and the flavor experience is genuinely unlike anything else. The outside of the fruit is sweet while the inside is tart, and together they create this bright punchy flavor that is completely addictive once you try it. The Nagami kumquat is the most widely available variety, and it grows beautifully in containers. The tree stays naturally compact without much intervention, it produces fruit heavily and reliably, and the fruit stays attached to the tree for an extended period after ripening. That last point matters more than people realize because it means you're not racing to harvest everything at once before it goes bad. You can pick a few at a time over several weeks. It is also one of the more cold-tolerant citrus options out there, which makes it genuinely accessible to gardeners living in climates that are not particularly warm or tropical. Number 7, Dwarf Pomegranate Tree. Here is where this list starts to get really interesting. Most people picture pomegranates as large sprawling trees growing in a sun-baked Mediterranean courtyard somewhere, not exactly the image of a container-friendly plant. But the dwarf variety known as Nana flips that assumption completely on its head. It grows to roughly 2 to 3 feet tall at maturity, fits comfortably in a relatively modest-sized pot, and produces small but completely real and edible fruit. Even if you set aside the fruit entirely and only consider the ornamental value, this tree would still be worth the space. The flowers it produces are a vivid orange-red color, and they are genuinely stunning in a way that few container plants can match. But the fruit is real, the flavor is authentic, and this tree can sit happily on an apartment balcony without ever outgrowing its space. It is one of those picks that makes people do a double take when they see it fruiting in a pot for the first time. We're halfway through the list, and I hope this is changing how you think about what's possible in a small space. If you're enjoying the video, tap the like button to help more gardeners discover it. And if you've grown any of these trees in containers, or have questions about one, drop a comment below. Now let's keep going, because the second half of this list includes some of the most surprising picks yet. Number 8, Dwarf Cherry Tree. Cherries are one of those fruits that most gardeners with limited space have quietly accepted they will never grow themselves. The assumption is that cherry trees are large, demanding, and need a lot of open land to perform. That assumption is wrong. Stella Cherry and Compact Stella are self-fertile dwarf varieties that grow very well in large containers and produce real full-size cherries that are sweet, firm, and genuinely delicious. Self-fertile means one tree is entirely sufficient, there is no need to source a second tree for cross-pollination. Cherry trees are relatively hungry plants, so they benefit from consistent fertilizing throughout the growing season, and they need a large enough container to support healthy root development. But when they fruit, they do not hold back. The spring blossom is also one of the most beautiful things you can have in a small outdoor space, delicate white and pale pink flowers that show up before almost any other tree in your garden wakes up for the season. Number 9, Olive Tree. Now this one is not always the first thing people think of when they hear of a fruit tree, but olives are technically a fruit, and olive trees are genuinely some of the most container-friendly trees that exist anywhere in the plant world. They are drought-tolerant, naturally slow-growing, and they thrive in well-draining soil, which makes them very forgiving of the kind of imperfect watering schedules that most real-life gardeners actually have. The Arbequina olive is the go-to variety for container growing. It is self-pollinating, which means one tree is enough. It starts producing fruit earlier than most other olive varieties, and the fruit it produces is small but absolutely usable for both home-cured table olives and olive oil if you have enough trees to press. Even beyond the fruit, an olive tree in a large pot is one of the most elegant and timeless things you can add to a patio, balcony, or small garden space. It ages beautifully, and the silvery green leaves look good in every season. Number 10, Dwarf Avocado Tree. This is the one that gets the biggest reaction every single time, and honestly I completely understand why. The idea of growing avocados in a container sounds like gardening fiction to most people, but it is entirely real and entirely doable. The variety you are looking for is called Little Cato or Wirtz avocado, and it is the most compact avocado variety available that still produces full-sized edible fruit. In the ground this tree stays under 10 feet tall, which already makes it unusually manageable for an avocado. In a container it stays considerably more compact and very workable for a patio or large balcony setup. Now there is one thing to be upfront about avocados: take a few years before they begin fruiting. This is a long game choice. But if you start one now and give it the sun, warmth, and consistent care it needs, in a few seasons you could realistically be pulling fresh avocados off a tree that lives in a pot on your patio. That is not a small thing. That is the kind of result that makes people stop and stare when they visit your space. Number 11, Mulberry Tree. Mulberries are almost completely absent from mainstream container gardening conversations, and that gap needs to be closed because the dwarf ever-bearing mulberry is one of the most productive, most forgiving, and most beginner-friendly fruit trees you can put in a pot. Unlike many fruit trees that drop all their fruit in one short window, the ever-bearing mulberry produces fruit across a long extended season. That means instead of a sudden overwhelming harvest you get a steady supply of sweet berries over several weeks. The berries are delicious eaten fresh, work beautifully in cooking and baking, and can be frozen for use throughout the year. The tree itself is very tolerant of imperfect conditions. It handles occasional dry spells, less than ideal soil, and some inconsistency in care without the dramatic response you might see from more sensitive trees. If you are new to container fruit gardening and want to start with something that will actually work while you are still learning, this is the tree to reach for first. Number 12, Dwarf Mandarin or Clementine Tree. We are coming back to citrus for the second to last spot because honestly citrus trees were practically designed for container growing, and this variety earns its place on this list on its own merits. Dwarf Satsuma mandarins and clementines are compact, reliably productive, and among the most cold-tolerant of all the citrus options, which makes them accessible to a much wider range of gardeners. The fruit is easy to peel, genuinely sweet, and enjoyed by pretty much every person who eats one. These trees bloom with a fragrance that fills the air around them, and once you have experienced a flowering citrus tree near your front door or outside your kitchen window, you will find it very hard to give that up. They are also quite forgiving of the occasional missed watering, which makes them realistic for people who travel, have busy schedules, or are still building their gardening habits. An all-round excellent choice, and one that delivers both beauty and produce in equal measure. Number 13, Dwarf Nectarine Tree. We are closing this list with a tree that most people have never once considered putting in a pot, and that is exactly why it belongs here. Nectarines are essentially smooth-skinned peaches, and in terms of container growing they behave almost identically to dwarf peach trees. Varieties like Nectarella and Dwarf Nectarine were developed specifically for compact growing environments. They bloom early in spring, produce full-sized fruit, and because of their naturally manageable size they are straightforward to move, protect from late frosts, and maintain through the growing season. The fruit is juicy, sweet, and has that deep satisfying flavor that you only really get from a tree-ripened nectarine. Store-bought nectarines are picked before they are ready and shipped hundreds of miles before they reach you. One grown in a pot on your own patio and picked when it is actually ripe is a completely different experience. It is one of those results that reminds you exactly why you started container gardening in the first place. So there you have it, 13 fruit trees you can grow in containers without needing a large yard, a big budget, or years of gardening experience. Container fruit gardening removes the biggest barriers to growing your own food. No space. No problem. Renting? No problem. New to gardening? You can still start. Pick one tree from this list, the one that fits your climate and produces fruit your household actually enjoys. Plant it in a good-sized pot with well-draining soil, place it in full sun, and water consistently. The rest you will learn as you go. If you found this helpful, give the video a like, subscribe for more practical gardening advice, and comment below which tree you plan to grow first. See you in the next one.